Whenever I get an email from Daryl and he asks, "Are you available this date?" I smile and say, "Yes." Then I go to my calendar to see if it's a yes. And when it was a yes, I'm excited. And then the reality sets in. But what am I going to say? I mean, it's a big book. There's a lot of stories to tell. Which one do I choose? So I'll choose my favorite, or one of my favorites, and it happens to be this one. And Barb talked about be strong and courageous. So in early January, I decided that's what I'm going to talk about. That will be the theme. And then 2 weeks ago, I was with many of you here for Kimmy Schroeder's remembrance ceremony. And I sat in the back with tears running down my cheek just like you did. And I listened to Peter when he so eloquently and courageously stood up and spoke about his daughter. And Kimmy's last words to her father. At 13 years of age, she said, "Daddy, be strong and brave." And I thought, that's what God told Joshua. The same thing. Be strong and courageous and brave. And he called his little daughter an amazing, courageous warrior. And I thought, yes, when you think about examples of strength and courage, you think of little Kimmy. But little Kimmy said that to her dad because her dad was strong and brave. From the moment of diagnosis to 8.5 years later, to holding her in his arms when she took her last breath. I need no other example. I need no other words. And you're probably scratching your head thinking, you entitled this sermon Moses' Mantra. Well, God gave it to Joshua. Moses didn't give it to Joshua, but Moses did give it to Joshua, just as Peter gave it to Kimmy. I'm sure that when Moses woke up every day, I wasn't there, maybe he was thinking to himself, "Okay, Moses, you got a task on your hand today. Be strong and courageous." And several times through the day, Moses had to say to all these people who were in a landless place for over close to 500 years, and then wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. And think about it. Would you grumble? After a day, I'd be grumbling. But 40 years, Moses had to deal with it. Be strong. Be courageous. And this guy Joshua, who was born a slave, they were all born into slavery under Pharaoh. And they finally were let loose, and they were wandering. He watched this individual called Moses, and he saw a strength of character, and he saw leadership skills, and he saw him be courageous and brave in those moments when he needed to be, finding his voice and standing up and reminding people who their God was and the promises that were given to them. Joshua watched this day after day after day. And so maybe it was a natural for when the time came at Moses' death to turn it over, the leadership, to Joshua. And so God said to him those words, "Be strong and courageous." Maybe it was just those words given by God because Moses had lived it out. And Joshua picked it up. And it really was Moses' mantra, but now it was Joshua's mantra. But that was so long ago. Yes, they had challenges. Yes, they had obstacles. Yes, they faced things we'll never face. And Joshua felt inadequate and afraid of going into a promised land that was filled with mighty fortresses and enemies and soldiers and people who would deny them the promise that was given to them. And Joshua's thinking, you want me to do this? You want us to do this? You want us to go where and become what? What kind of people? And so maybe it was every day that Joshua woke and said, I will be strong and courageous. And in the moment when somebody was in his face saying, you don't know what you're saying, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're up against, that he did what Barb told the children. Be strong and courageous, because I'm going to be with you. Tell me, when you think of examples of courage, when you think about moments, when you think about people, what comes to your mind? An example of courage. Come on, we're on the clock here. It's your time. Standing up to a bully. First responders. Freedom marchers. Rosa Parks. You must, in your mind, well, not you must. You have. You have someone who you just say, what an incredibly brave individual. Where did they get that courage to stand up to the person who is mistreating a young person, someone who's so vulnerable? Where do the people get the strength and the courage to leave their homeland, their country, because they fear for their life? And they walk miles and miles and miles to a border where they're not sure whether they're going to get in or not, and how they're treated along the way, how the women are treated, how the children are treated. You talk about being afraid. You talk about having doubts. You talk about being despairing and depressed. Where do these people find that courage? Somebody in their life has been that source deep, deep inside of their mind, deep embedded in their heart, that you can do it, as Barb told the children. I can do this. Moses was one of those individuals. This is a lousy job I've been given, but I can do this because I have a promise and I have a presence. And each one of those individuals, Rosa Parks, the person who is handed their child and given a diagnosis, you, as you face news that is the worst possible news about a loved one, about an accident, where do people find courage? There's all kinds of courage. Mark Twain said, courage is resistance to fear, mastery of fear. It's not the absence of fear. And fear for us is, well, it's all different. We have not had to be what a Rosa Parks was. We have not had to be a Nelson Mandela. We have not had to be that young soldier, Desmond Doss, portrayed in the movie Hacksaw Ridge, who saved 75 people. We've never been there. We've never been in that place. I've never been where Peter has been with a child. Courage is that quality of mind or spirit that enables you and me to face difficulty and danger and pain without fear, or better yet, in spite of fear. I am afraid of this moment. I am afraid of this future that's been dealt to me. But in spite of it, I will find something inside of my being that will enable me to be strong and courageous. Joshua had an example. Kimmy had an example. You in your life, and I don't know what kind of week you had. I don't know all of your stories. I don't know the future that you face. None of us do. But I know when the moment comes, there have been people who have surrounded us. There are people that we can turn to. And while I felt the freedom to cry 2 weeks ago here in this place is because you have created the kind of place where you feel safe, where it's okay to cry. And it's okay to tell somebody, I am scared to death. Or to have the courage to say, I'm as angry as hell at what's going on. It's okay because you have created that. Because you are providing for other people that support as you surrounded Peter in that moment with that strength. We marvel at his courage. We pray for the courage and the strength for him this moment and this day as he grieves and will grieve the rest of his life. But somehow, some way, he found it. There's all kinds of courage. There's the physical courage that we talk about that the soldier has to save someone's life. There's that social courage where somebody as young as 12 years old can say, no, that's wrong. Don't do that. Even though she will be ridiculed by her friends. What do you? But she stands up and finds her voice. Or that moral courage in that moment where you choose the harder right instead of the easier wrong. When no one is looking. But you go deep. And you say, it's wrong. And as much as I want to do it, because it's so easy and so tantalizing, that's the courage. That's the strength in the moment that we muster. Or the emotional courage that we face when we wake up. And instead of waking up feeling like, I feel so rested. It's a great day. The sun is shining. It's beautiful out. I feel like $1,000,000. I don't remember the last time I felt that one. And for some of us, we laugh and make fun of it, but for some of us, when we open our eyes, it's like another day. It's carrying a weight around. But you find the courage to take the deep breath and say, I will be strong. I will find courage and bravery to get myself out of bed, to fight those negative feelings, to fight that negative thought, and push it aside. And I will say 100 times if I need to cancel it out. Be brave and courageous. Be brave and courageous. Be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. Just chase it away. That's emotional courage. And intellectual courage. Have you had that moment where you said, maybe this whole thing growing up where they told me there was a God, and they told me these wonderful stories, and I'm telling you another one about this person called Joshua. Maybe it's not true. Maybe we just made it up to make us feel better, to give us hope that you sang about, just so that we have something to keep us going in those dark moments. Maybe. Intellectual courage, being able to face that maybe. Question your faith. Have that doubt. And know that it's okay to question and have doubts. To engage with challenging ideas and thoughts. That takes courage. And the spiritual, it's that question. But you have courage to face it. The mantra was Moses, and he just lived it. He didn't have to say it. And Joshua witnessed it. And it became Ruth's. and Daniel's. It became Jesus' mantra. It became Peter's and Silas. It became Nelson's and Martin's. It became the child. It became the young girl from Nigeria strapped with a vest full of bombs to figure out how to undo it and tell her story. People somehow find courage in the moment when they are afraid and they stand up, and not in a big way where the news will cover it, but in a very quiet way. And they will breathe deep. And they will say, because I've been surrounded by so many people who have provided that example, I will, in this moment, without anyone knowing, be strong and courageous. Why? Because the passage that was read to us told us. Because God promised. I will do this for you. I promise this. And if there's anyone you can trust, trust me. I've got a pretty good track record. Read the stories. It's worked. So I promise this to you. I won't leave you. I won't forsake you. I will provide for you. I will supply the needs that you have in that moment. There is a promise and there is a presence. And that's why in that moment I will be able to say, feeling like Peter felt, I am not alone. And Peter feels Kimmy's presence this day. And we feel and can hear her smiles, or hear her song and see her smile. Because there is a presence, though it's invisible, though we can't touch it, it is there with us forever in our heart. God said it to Moses. God said it to Joshua. Joshua said it to the people, and the people passed it on. And here we are today. Someone passed it on to us. So we will be strong and courageous.